This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
911, what's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Wilton, joined by Sergeant Wilton. Clint, how are you?
I'm good.
You have been and continue to be a lot more familiar with the locker room than I ever have been, nor will I ever be. You know, you with sports and working, doing what you do, having a locker. And I remember I didn't get that opportunity because I've had reconstructive surgery on my knee so many times. And so I can't even remember ever having a locker, actually. And so I think that there's something that's not in the manual, but everybody sort of knows the rules. And when it comes to the culture as a first responder, how camaraderie is built, how conflict brews, there's this sort of hidden code that shapes everything from your morale to your mental health. And a lot of that is derived in the locker room.
It's so funny that in talking about this, I had to have a conversation with one of my guys recently and just say, hey, be careful what you say in the locker room because you never know who's in there. And meaning as if you say something silly like, yeah, I think I'm going to call in sick tomorrow because I don't want to come in, and then you call in sick. Like, if you have someone of administration inside the locker room, they're going to be like, well, you weren't sick. Why did you call in sick when you could have just taken the day off? This wasn't, you can't pre-plan to have those sick days. And that's just a example of that. But being able to have conversations, and like when I go into the locker room every day, especially being a sergeant now, it's so weird that dynamic has shifted because you still have the camaraderie of all the officers talking and building up, like hyping themselves up for the day. But then at the same time, I come in and they go, hey, sir, hey, sir, hey, sir, hey, sir. And then it dwindles down some, and not in a bad way. Like, I think it's important to do that because one, they don't put me in a position to where I have to say, hey, look, you guys can't do this stupid shit. Or I can partake in the conversations that they're having and get them hyped up. It's a kind of a balance between the two.
Yeah, and that helps to be able to build the repetitious pattern and the comfort, you know, when things kind of dwindle down, as you said. And so the locker room isn't just where you suit up. I think that it's basically where you test your loyalty, you build your brotherhood, and sometimes you actually hide what you're really feeling, meaning that somebody might make a comment that they wouldn't make when you're all geared up and out on the streets, and you, instead of speaking your truths, might decide to kind of hide things a little bit. And this is also where a lot of traditions and sarcasm, these silent expectations exist, all of this stuff that kind of lives behind these closed doors that create that culture that can really unify or divide a team.
It's so funny because my guys make fun of me all the time because I get dressed so fast and I change out so fast. Like, I've always been that way throughout my whole career. And it's not that I'm not hanging out and wanting to bullshit in the locker room. In my mind, I'm just like, let's get this day over with and kind of push through by putting the uniform on. I have stuff I got to do. Let me cross all of these off my list. And then when it's time to go home, like, I'll walk in 10 minutes behind somebody who's changing, and I'm done changing in like 1 minute and I'm out the door. And they're like, how do you do that so fast? And I just say, I have rip off pants. But it's having that building, that team building, that kind of conversations of what's going on, and the shit talking, the building one another up or breaking each other down. And it's goods and bads. You have to have that, because when you go into the briefing room, you don't see that same kind of conversation going on.
Yeah, and we might not realize that this is happening, but it doesn't only apply to locker rooms. I mean, for me personally, my locker room is my Facebook group every single morning. For some people, it might be going into their break room at the place that they work. But one toxic comment at the start of your day can actually carry that into your shift, into the field, into the entire duration of your day. And it can actually really influence your mindset and even your energy and trust before your workday even begins.
Yeah, I look at it as you have your routine, you go into the locker room every day, you're putting on, you put on your left sock, you put on your right sock, and you just start working up your normal way of yourself getting ready. Like we each have a routine on how we put each, keeper on our belts or our vest on, or however the order is that you do it. And one of those comments can completely throw you awry and sets off your internal imbalance now for the rest of the day. And it's being able to change that dynamic.
Another thing too is that this sort of becomes a litmus test for belonging. So getting teased usually means that like you're in, right? And staying quiet usually means that you're not. And again, this is something that I don't hear people talk about. And, you being in the locker room and out just as quickly, kind of having that continued banter still, at least that showcases your level of confidence, your level of openness to be able to communicate with other people. And, some people are shy, maybe some people are tired, and that's okay sometimes. But I think that it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there and have those conversations, and then be able to interject yourself in a way that allows you to show that you're trying to be involved.
Yeah, and that's where it's funny because I'll make, the guys will be joking and I'll make little remarks here and there, and as I'm getting ready, and it catches them off guard, which is really funny because they're not sure how to respond to that. But then it opens up that kind of conversation, that dynamic in the future, whether you're out on calls, and it builds that trust.
Another thing too is that it can also influence how you view leadership and rank, or receive it if you do work in leadership. And officers who earn that sort of locker room respect, they often carry a lot of that into the field of influence, even more so than what their title suggests. Yeah,
being able to control that leadership role and stand up for when things aren't right, or intercede if you have to, but being that team builder, being that consistent, that force. And I do want to say there's a difference between just going and talking shit to people every day the same way and attacking them, compared to sharing a playful banter.
I'm really glad you said that, because I think that there's actually a healthier way to be able to create this culture behind closed doors. And one of them is to make sure that you're modeling respect without losing the humor. And what I mean by that is that you can joke without cutting people down. So banter doesn't have to be brutal.
Yeah, and that's where having that brutal kind of that conversation with people on a regular basis, like that just breaks someone down. I would look at the underlying reason why is that person attacking that other individual all the time, compared to just having that teammate and building them up, joking, but having a balance between the two.
Something that I try to carry with me always, and Clint, you can attest to this because I love talking to people, is I always try to watch out for the outlier. So the person who is always quiet, they're always withdrawn, they're always excluded. Inclusion isn't passive, it's intentional. And what I mean by that is that you have to make the choice to involve yourself. So whenever I see somebody who isn't or always isn't, I try to do my best to, with grace, gently include them.
Being able to bring in those persons who don't, because I think over time they're kind of pushed out more and more and more, because they're not in that clique, they're not in that kind of group setting, and they don't have the comfortableness to bring themselves in, and having someone to stand up for them, bring them into that fold is super important, because you can see a whole team dynamic completely shift once that happens.
Something that takes confidence in the locker room or just in life is to make sure that we're always setting boundaries for what's off limits, but most importantly, that we call things out early. When we do that, it helps to be able to prevent long-term damage. So some jokes, for example, they just cross the line. So speaking up immediately is going to make it to where that type of thing doesn't continue or get worse, which it usually does if you don't say something.
Yeah. And like you don't want to have that negative environment when you come into that locker room, when you have someone just picking at somebody for, say, their work ethic, or say, you did this and I don't agree with it, and just attacking them on a regular basis. There's a difference between like personal attacks and that banter, and having a balance of being able to joke around and talk about how was your weekend, how was your day, whatever else it may go on, but not having to physically go after or mentally go after someone, because you're just setting them up for this downward spiral that they might not even want to go down.
Yeah. And, you made mention of the word balance. And I think that's important, to balance your brotherhood or your sisterhood with your individuality. Not everybody is going to connect in the same way, and that's totally okay. But it's important for us to realize how to respect what the difference is. And also, some of these conversations are a great opportunity in order to be able to go beyond the surface. So it doesn't need to be like a therapy session, but asking somebody how they're really doing can actually completely shift their mindset for that entire day.
Yeah, you're building them to have that conversation, to say, well, they actually care. That, someone who I thought was just my partner and we work together, they actually care about me. Maybe we're more than we can be friends.
Yeah. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below. And as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with AutoQuote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.